Development and Community Engagement at ASA. And I am very excited today because we are talking about something that's a little bit near and dear to my heart. Um, so often when we look and think about the work that everybody is doing, we think about the work that you're doing in aging. But there is so much that's happening behind the scenes to make that possible, especially in your marketing and fundraising departments. And so, as we have started to think about this, and as we've started to think about how we can better support our members, one of the things that we're really committed to doing is to think about your back office supports as well. This year, ASA rebranded, and so did one of our partners, Home Instead. And with me today is Lakelyn Hogan, who is from Home Instead. And when we started to talk about both of our experiences, we realized that there was a real opportunity here for us to talk to our members and talk to the people who care about ASA and really think about how we could offer supports in and around rebranding. And so before we get started on this, I would like to first and foremost introduce Lakelyn. So Lakelyn, thank you for doing this with us today. And can you give us a little bit about your background?
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I get excited about this conversation. I am Home Instead's gerontologist, but what a lot of people don't know is my undergrad was in marketing and communications and advertising. So to be able to blend kind of my two passions together in a conversation like this just makes me really, really happy. So thank you so much for having me and for talking about this, because I think as you mentioned, we are all doing really great work. But if no one knows about the great work we're doing through our marketing and our communication and our branding, then it makes our work a lot more challenging at times. So having that strong brand and that strong marketing behind your mission can be really impactful.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know about you, but I think when we start talking about branding, a lot of times there's often a confusion about what is brand versus what is marketing. And I think that that's kind of an elephant in the room in this discussion. So before we kind of really talk how do we rebrand, let's talk about what the heck is a brand and what's involved in a rebrand. So for the first thing that we always look at is, yes, it has to do with your logo. Yes, it has to do with your imagery, but it also has to do with your tagline. It also has to do with the way you want to define yourself to your consumers, to your users, to your clients, to any audience you have. In fact, every time that I've been through a rebrand, the first step that we go through is defining who are all the audiences that we talk to. And that includes, of course, the people who support you and the people you support. And that's broken down in all sorts of buckets. I guess for us, as we looked at this, we made the decisions to keep the ASA brand in keeping our name, right? So the American Society on Aging kept our name, but our look and our feel dramatically changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, colors, imagery, the whole thing shifted for us. From your perspective at Home Instead, you did kind of the opposite. So can you talk a little bit about how you decided what you did and how you did it?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And I first have to say, I love your new look and feel. It's really exciting. We've been partners with ASA for a really long time. So I got really used to your old logo and could recognize it instantly. And so to see this refresh and rebrand, it's really exciting for your organization. And as partners, we're excited for you. But yeah, we took a little bit of a different approach. This is actually our third rebrand. I could get into kind of the history of it, but this is kind of our third iteration. But when we were founded by our founders, Paul and Lori Hogan, back in 1994, home care wasn't really a well-established industry yet. So when we when they came up with the name Home Instead Senior Care, we really needed that senior care piece to tell our story, what we do. We care for people in their older years of life. And since our start, we've grown. We're now in 14 countries. We have 1,200 franchise locations across the globe. So we really, we've become an industry leader, and we needed our brand and our name to reach across our global footprint and to be a fit in all of our markets. And we also have learned, over the years that people know us and often refer to us just as Home Instead. And when you look at like our search optimization, those types of things, people are searching for us as Home Instead as opposed to Home Instead Senior Care. And then again, that cultural relevance. When you look to other global markets, the word senior is not always recognized. There's not always an equivalent word in their language for senior. So we wanted to be sure that we could be, again, recognized across the globe, that our name would fit in all of our markets. And then also as the baby boomers age, which we know they're entering into those later years of life, the word senior is often used less frequently, I think, with that generation, because they're really redefining aging and the aging process. So we want to be more culturally relevant, not only to that baby boomer generation, but really across the globe. And so that's kind of one of the key components to our whole rebranding.
Yeah, and you guys you kept your tagline, which I love. Your tagline is, "To us, it's personal."
Yeah.
And I think it's such a great story because um, it has a personal meaning to the founders. It has a personal
Mhm.
meaning. Um, and it's interesting to me, right? Because there's always an emotional context to kind of building a brand.
Mhm.
So it was really, I think, lovely that you were able to kind of keep that connection, but you were
Yeah.
also able to recognize that this is a very personal business that you're in, right?
Mhm.
Um, was that something that you went into this process knowing? Did you go in and say, don't touch our tagline, which happens, right? There are sometimes when you go into the branding process, there are certain things that are sacrosanct, right? Or did you kind of say, everything's on the table, let's see where we end up? What was your process on that?
Yeah, it was kind of the latter. Let's put everything out there on the table. And we did a lot of consumer research. You talked about those stakeholders earlier, everyone that's important to your brand. And we wanted to really get in their minds, show them a lot of different options, and see what resonated with them. So we had an internal and external team that really ensured the success of this whole rebranding process. And so they kind of tested things out, not only here in the States, but in markets across the globe. And it was that tagline, "To us, it's personal," really did resonate with the end user because they want that personalized experience. And for us, keeping it continues to just showcase our one-on-one personal relationships that we really stand for as part of our brand. Another part of our brand that we got to keep, so we got to keep the tagline. We also got to keep the tulip, which also has a lot of meaning for us at Home Instead. And it used to be over the I in instead, but now it's been pulled out of the logo and encircled. And that circle kind of has a neat meaning. So it symbolizes a full life and the community of people that it takes to care for an individual. We want to surround the individual with care and support. And also we want it to be a sign of hope and growth, and the continued experiences that happen at the later stage of life. Once you get to that stage, life isn't over. There's still a lot of hope. So I'm really happy that those two components were kept with the brand. But again, we went in saying, all right, let's put everything on the table and see what our stakeholders find value in.
I really love that you had that kind of piece of hope in there because that
Yeah.
optimism drove our branding as well. And it's funny, we've never talked about this before.
Yeah. No, we
Um,
have.
it's so funny as you were saying, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is hysterical. But so our arch is supposed to kind of also connect into kind of the feeling of a sunrise almost, or
Mm.
feeling of optimism and hope as well, because we felt the same way that aging, and we talk about this, we're in the blogs we wrote, is that, aging doesn't always look the same, and
Right.
um, and that we want to represent all that aging looks like, and that in a lot of cases, aging is a really great piece of our lives. I think a study came out recently that said something like 2/3 of people are looking forward to the next stage of their life, right? And so that's a really powerful statement, and so that's what we were representing as well. And it's funny, our taglines that we're using now are that kind of that unite, empower, champion that you're seeing everywhere,
Yeah.
came out of similarly, except that it actually came because as we looked at this, we also looked at our programming, and we kept kind of putting things in buckets. How do we better serve our members? How can we unite them? How can we give them more empowerment and more opportunities? And how can we champion them? And how can they champion as well? How can they do more? And so we kept using these as these programming buckets. And all of a sudden, as we were looking at this, we were like, wait a minute, this is the very essence of what we're doing. And so that our tackling really became about how are we serving our members, and how do they serve their
Hmm.
constituents, right? So
Yeah.
it kind of had that double meaning for us as well, right? It wasn't just about ASA as the organization, but it's also very much about our members.
Hmm.
Was important to us. Um, yeah, I really love going through a rebranding process. I think it helps to center the organization. It's a for me, it's funny, I've gone through this with different organizations over the years at different times, and I think the one thing that a rebranding does consistently is it makes you look at everything. You can't take a deep dive just into what you look like without taking a deep dive into so many other parts of your business,
Hmm.
and business model. And I think that inevitably, other shifts within the organization end up coming out at the same time. They
Yeah.
can either lead towards the branding or they result from that process, but
Hmm.
they always happen together. Talk to me a little bit about what else was happening at home instead that in this time period for you.
Yeah, I would say that at Home Instead, we have our care, our highly personalized care that we deliver in the home, but we also have a lot of other great work that we do. We have a foundation where we give back to senior nonprofits or nonprofits that serve older adults across the country. We have a Ready to Care movement. So we have these different kind of initiatives, and so one of the things that came out of this rebrand for us is that kind of taking out senior care allowed us to have Home Instead as a branded house. So as we look to the future, we know that the baby boomers, they have a little bit different idea of what aging is going to look like. So they might need different support and services, and maybe it's before that help in the home is needed. They might have other needs that Home Instead wants to help assist with. So I think it really opened us up to possibilities in the future, created opportunity for future products and services that again could live under that branded house. And then also we know that we want as an organization to expand the world's capacity to care. We know that we might not be in every single home across the United States, across the globe. That's mathematically just not possible for us. But we want to be able to support people as they age. And so again, this branded house can allow for us to develop possibly new market segments in the future beyond that high acuity need and that kind of frail older adult to perhaps serve people across the aging kind of spectrum or process. So again, it kind of coincided with those strategic goals that we have as an organization, and really just more so supported us and opened up the options for possibilities for the future, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's what inevitably a really good rebranding does, right? It doesn't
Mhm.
limit you in any way, because I think this is not a process you want to have to go through very often. You
Right.
want people to really come to know your look and feel. But you also really want to make sure that it does help define you. And so while you don't want it to close you off, you want it to continue to open those doors. And I feel that's something that I'm excited for both of us, because I think that was something that hopefully did really successfully.
Yes.
So we're just about out of time. I think one of my favorite things to do with the ASA Lives is to ask for your biggest piece of advice. So here you go. This is your chance. What's your biggest piece of advice in this process?
Wow. Well, I'm glad you narrowed it down to this process, because I could have a lot of pieces of advice for all sorts of things related to aging and marketing. But I think specific to rebranding, I would highly, highly suggest that if you're going through the process, engage internal and external stakeholders. I mean, if you can hire an outside firm, that's awesome. But if you're maybe a small nonprofit, you maybe don't have the resources to do that, establish an internal and external stakeholder team, because you want to be able to run by those that matter to your brand. Maybe it's your end consumer. Maybe it's other organizations that you partner with. Be able to run by new logos or new taglines and really get their feedback before making a decision. Because sometimes internally we're so close to the brand and so close to the mission, and we are really passionate, and that's a great thing. But sometimes that can limit us in this rebranding process and seeing those possibilities that exist for your brand. So I think my biggest piece of advice would be to get that internal and external perspective throughout the rebranding process.
I really love that, because I think, I always recommend that you desperately try to bring in somebody else to help you through this process, even if you're doing a lot of the work internally. It's having at least some external voice in there helping to guide you is so important. It just brings in so many new ideas. And the whole point of a rebranding is to break out of your mold. So I love that piece of advice. I'm going to also say this, that I'm here to help at ASA. So I would love to connect with you if this is something that you at your organization are thinking about doing, have questions about. Please feel free to reach out to me. I would be happy to talk to you about this. I'm happy to provide some ideas or some comments, but I think that these are the types of things that we at ASA can provide to our members as easy as kind of easily as connecting with us, especially at our On Aging conference that's coming up. Lakelyn and I are both going to be there.
Yes.
Will be a featured speaker at a couple of sessions. And so, and I'll be available. You can connect right through our online system. You can simply connect through our networking system to ask any questions. You can grab our email. You can connect with us that way. But I think it's a really good opportunity for us to be able to answer questions on a more one-on-one basis. So please feel free to reach out to me. Again, the conference is, believe it or not, coming up really soon. It's October 6th. No, not October 6th. It's April 6th. Our whole staff just got excited that they just gained 6 more months to plan it. It's April 6th. And you can still register at onaging.org. And we hope that we'll see you there. And we hope that today was helpful to you. Thank you so much, Lakelyn, for doing this with me.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun chatting with you, Cindy, and excited that we got to have the opportunity to chat. And I can't wait for the On Aging conference. So I hope to see many of you there virtually.
Yes, virtually. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.